Okay. Sup, bro? Today, reffing Steven Crowder's little change my mind thing. So, pretty simple, just what it says on the tin. Uh, he thinks biological males should not compete in women's sports. And, a random stoner named Isaac is going to challenge him in the first part. The debate rules are as follows. If you misuse a word, well, it's probably easy just to read it yourself. I'll just leave it up here. And I'll make a note, like, in this video, not the video that you're currently watching, but in the video that I'll link, this one by Steven Crowder. I'll have a timestamp to where he makes, like, claims and where I assign points. So, yeah, let's start the show.
That was a little more productive. Isaac, Steven, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, Isaac, I don't know. I know you said you've watched the show.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know how familiar you are kind of with this, but the idea is that we, sit down with people, hopefully where it's a rational discussion on what are sort of controversial topics. And often people will have rational discussions, on topics that are, okay, it's easy to have a rational discussion, or it's easy to rationalize your position. The second it gets into something that may be emotionally charged, we throw it out the window. So that's what it is in the bottom line. Today's topic, I do not believe that biological males should be allowed to compete in women's sports. Obviously, you disagree to some degree.
Yes.
Feel free to make your case and change my mind.
Okay. I guess my first point of contention would be with the wording of the statement.
Okay.
Biological males should not compete. I'm curious as to why it would be biological males and not trans.
Say 256.
To some degree.
Yes.
Feel free to make your case and change my mind.
Okay. I guess my first point of contention would be with the wording of the statement.
Okay.
Biological males should not compete. I'm curious as to why it would be biological males and not trans women should not compete, because I feel like there is a distinction there, even if it is, maybe an arbitrary one in your case.
Well, how is it not arbitrary?
How is it not? Oh, you mean the distinction between trans? Yeah.
So when you say that, for example, I could use either term interchangeably.
Yeah.
Biological males is something that everyone would understand.
Yeah.
So why is it so important to you that terminology be changed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so this guy, he just did a tone policing fallacy. So he's like, I just don't like the way you said that. He didn't really attack the semantic content of the argument. He just was like, I don't see why you have to say it that way. Like, that's an edgy way to say it, brah. And he says brah after every sentence because, as you can tell by the beating, the long hair, and the flannel shirt, he is in the stoner culture war faction.
I feel like
So wait, 3:30.
a lot of the times people use like biology as this sort of like constant, obviously I'm sure you believe, maybe I'm wrong, that like biology it's a binary and that there's male and female and that it's just like that. Is that correct? And that you can be one or the other and that there's no...
As a general rule, there are obviously radical exceptions to the
Okay,
rule, like
sure.
intersex people or people with, androgen resistance or stuff, but we're talking about, 0.01% of the population. So yes.
Okay. 406.01% of population is intersex. So, first of all, that's kind of a silly thing to say because that's like 1 in 10,000 people. At this college, there's probably like 20,000 people. So at this college alone, there's probably 2 people that are intersex. So it's not like just because it's 0.01%, you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's ridiculous. I guess I need to give him a point for that. Maybe not. Not yet.
Obviously, and obviously even people who believe in the transgender ideology have long agreed that biology exists in a binary.
Oh, for sure.
And not gender, but biology.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So if we agree that biological sex is, or at least, would you agree with my presumption here that certainly what's being taught on school is that gender and sex are different, and the primary difference is sex is biological and gender is societal?
Yeah.
Okay. Sex is biological. Gender is societal.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. So sorry. Continue with your point as to why you would prefer it be worded with trans women versus biological males.
Because I do believe that as far as expression goes, like obviously there is that difference that you're talking about. And even in trans women, a lot of them who do compete in sports, there is obviously the hormonal, like, you know, estrogen and like all the like treatment that they go through, which does.
Man, I can't like cost Steven any points for this, but he really picked like a clearly dumb person like to upload for a debate.
Alter their physical sort of like ability to compete in these sports, and so to say biological men instead of trans women sort of indicates that there is no difference when I think there probably is.
Actually,
you know, if
no.
minor.
I would argue. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your point because you just said that gender is societal.
Yeah.
Sex is biological.
Yeah.
So the reason that I am saying is biological males is because this is biological, right?
Yeah.
Males.
Yeah.
But then you're saying you would rather see trans women, which is societal. It's not biological. Sports are separated by biology.
Okay.
That's why there are male-female divisions.
Yes.
And up until recently, male
What?
are separated by males is because this is biological, right? Males.
Yeah.
But then you're saying you would rather see trans women, which is societal. It's not biological. Sports are separated by biology.
Okay.
That's why there are male-female divisions.
Yes.
And up until recently, male-female divisions, men's and women's divisions, they were always separated by biology. And you're suggesting that it would be more conducive to an accurate assessment here by using a gendered term rather than biological.
Okay, I see your point now. Yes. So I would concede to you on that as far as like the distinction. I'm fine with the wording.
He said he explicitly conceded. I don't know why he did that. But that did just happen. I guess I have to give him a point. Like, if I want to be consistent. Explicitly conceding.
If that is sort of your, you know.
Well, I want to understand
Yeah.
your position because you
Yes.
just said that gender and sex are different.
Yes.
And my issue is with, I don't care if someone wants to identify.
Yeah.
Right? If they want to identify as a woman in society, that's a totally separate issue. We're talking about sports, which have been separated by biological sex.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
We're talking about biological males who are now dominating biological females.
Okay, so my point of contention with what you just said there would be that biological males are dominating biological females. I have not seen that play out. Obviously, there's a few cases here and there, but I could easily.
Okay, he has not seen that play out. He's just rejecting the data that Stephen's presenting. I don't really like that. He needs to be punished for it. Okay, I'm gonna adjust demanding more evidence than is reasonable. I'm gonna downgrade that to a level 2. Level 2 violation.
Just make the argument that Leah Thomas came in 8th in one of her races and came in 5th in another one. And so I would just
set the record in one.
Yes,
and
for
set
sure.
the record with a time that would have ranked not even in the top 500.
Yeah.
Right, not even the top 500 male rankings.
Yeah.
For the 500 meter, not even the top 800 for the 200 meter, which I believe is what Leah Thomas won.
You're saying the record he set when he was
The
racing
record
women
that he set is a race with women, yeah.
would not even
Rank in
register.
the top 500 with
And
men.
how does that further your point?
Well, the point is this is someone who was competing as a male,
Yes.
was a middling to low end of the pack
Yes.
male,
Yes.
and is now a champion female.
My argument to that would just be that the reason why he was middle of the pack was because he was on hormones, and
No,
because
no,
he
not
had already
before.
he had begun to transition while he was competing against men, as far as I was aware.
No, and if you would argue that, it would certainly only be at the tail.
So what should I do when he's just disagreeing? He's still just rejecting Stephen's claim. Because like Stephen, he does have like the facts to back this up. I think I have to give this a -1. Rejecting valid evidence. Yeah, it's a -2 actually.
Tail end, not for the entirety of his athletic career.
No, not for the entirety.
Right.
But when you're looking at those middle of the pack numbers, I believe, and obviously it's just your word against my word, so
Right,
I'm not gonna like stay on this point.
No, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And I try and make all the references publicly available, so when this goes up.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I can just easily get something wrong. For example, I could be mixing up the 200 and 500 meter.
Right,
And
yeah.
I know that he won one of them.
And it's kind of, you're missing the forest for the trees if you want to get caught up in
Yeah,
that,
exactly,
so.
because there are many, many examples of biological males dominating biological females. You know, there are over 80 examples of women who either lost out on opportunities or scholarships. You have Mary Gregory, I believe, in powerlifting. You have women cycling, a record that was set. You have examples across the board in weightlifting, in cycling, in swimming, in...
These are good points. I'll consolidate all that into one good point. 825. Bringing up a good point.
Track, not to mention combat sports where women can actually be physically harmed. So it has happened quite a bit. Now, granted, it's such a small percentage of the population.
Sure.
What I want to avoid is, and I mean this genuinely, I'm not just blowing smoke, you seem like a sharp guy, you know, that intellectual fallacy of appeal to novelty. Right, that argumentum ad novitatum is what they'll call it, but appeal to novelty, which means, well, since we haven't done it yet, therefore there are no consequences. Well, it's just...
Is that a thing? I don't think that's what he was saying.
No, not before. He had begun to transition while he was competing against men, as far as I was aware.
No, and if you would argue that, it would certainly only be at the tail end, not for the entirety of his athletic career.
No, not for the entirety.
Right.
But when you're looking at those middle of the pack numbers, I believe, and obviously it's just your...
I'm adding a new negative category in tier 3. So, this is deliberate misleading. Now, watch very carefully to see what Stephen does.
Word against my word, so I'm not gonna like stay on this point.
No, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
and I try and make all the references publicly available, so when this goes up. Because I can just easily get something wrong. For example, I could be mixing up the 200 and 500 meter.
Right.
You know, I know that he won one of them.
And it's kind of, you're missing the forest for the trees if you want to get caught up in that.
Yeah, exactly, because there are many, many examples of biological males dominating biological females. You know, there are over 80 examples of women who either lost out on opportunities or scholarships. You have Mary Gregory, I believe, in powerlifting. You have women cycling, a record that was set. You have examples across the board in weightlifting, in cycling.
Because like this, like, so he just thinks it's not happening enough yet. And he keeps on listing things that he just doesn't agree with. I'm not comfortable calling it like a full-on gish gallop, though.
in swimming, in track, not to mention combat sports where women can actually be physically harmed. So it has happened quite a bit. Now, granted, it's such a small percentage of the population. What I want to avoid is, and I mean this genuinely, I'm not just blowing smoke, you seem like a sharp guy, you know, that intellectual fallacy of appeal to novelty, right, that argument.
Yeah, so he's just like making this up. Like he wasn't like succumbing to this appeal to novelty thing. He just didn't agree with what Stephen was saying. So yeah, maybe deliberate misleading doesn't need to be a tier 3. What if we just downgrade it? Tier 2? Yeah, tier 2. Okay. So, like, he was bringing up some good points, but then Steven Crowder ruined it for himself by just throwing out this, appeal to novelty thing, which the stoner guy wasn't even doing. So, deliberate misleading, -2.
Ad novitatum is what they'll call it, but appeal to novelty, which means, well, since we haven't done it yet.
So, like, Stephen had this, like, appeal to novelty, like, thing prepared in his note cards, and he just was waiting to use it. But, like, it wasn't an appropriate time for him to pull out that card. So he's, like, playing the card at the wrong time. Because this guy, this Isaac guy, the problem wasn't an appeal to novelty. The problem was he just, like, didn't believe, like, the claims that Stephen's making. Of course, as that's happening, Steven Crowder's, like, posting these juicy, complicated links at the bottom, and, you know, that just automatically gives you credibility. But, like, that wasn't happening in the conversation, like, while the guy was sitting here. So it's kind of not fair what happened to this guy.
Therefore, there are no consequences. Well, it's just because we haven't done it yet. This is very, very new. And where we have implemented these types of policies, we've seen an unbelievable differential between the biological males and women.
Okay.
It's just we've only been doing this for a few years. It's like saying...
Unbelievable differential? Okay. Okay, boss. The difference between males and females is insurmountable. Between all males and females is insurmountable.
Well, there are no negative consequences to a 90% income tax yet.
Sure.
But if we implement it tomorrow and it takes 5 years to see all the bankruptcies,
right,
it's not really an argument. So where we have implemented it, we have seen quite a few examples.
Okay.
But it is on a smaller scale because it would have been considered absurd 5 years ago.
And it's hard for me to contextualize that 80 number that you gave because I do not know what the total is. So it's like it's a hard number rather than a percentage. So it's hard for me to take that at face value. Just for that reason.
Let's say it's not that much.
Yeah.
Okay. It's still more than 1.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we can get to my issues. You know, for example, you mentioned hormones. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure that I understand this because I think you're actually arguing what a lot of people argue, and I can understand why people would think this way.
Yeah.
That if a biological male undergoes hormone replacement, that they no longer would have the biological advantages inferred.
I'm not necessarily saying that. Obviously, that is the majority, but it's obviously not in every case.
So
situation.
if someone did not undergo hormone replacement therapy at all, you would be against them competing against women?
I actually don't know. It's a very
then why bring it up?
Situation. Oh, just because as far as
because you brought that up as one of the first things.
Yes, just in the case of these people are just dominating and whatever, and in the case of Leah Thomas competing against men. It was more so just to say that like he was competing against men while he was on hormones.
Yeah.
But my greater sort of, because you do bring up a good point, which is that it is more than one, like
Right.
who is going to be harmed. And I don't think in my mind there's a perfect answer to this sort of, because in my mind there's a couple different options. It's either you
Okay, like what?
exclude transgender people entirely from competing.
And that's
I
not
think
what I'm.
one.
That's not what I'm
no,
suggesting.
and yeah,
No.
totally. I don't think
They just
you-
compete
yeah.
with their biological sex.
Right, yeah. So, and then there is the other option of letting them compete with their biological sex. I believe you do run into the same problems, which is that if you are to let biological women compete with transgender men who were once women, you're essentially pitting women against, in your mind, other women who are just basically doping.
Okay, that's a super good point. That's actually a super good point. 11:20. Do I want to just give him like 1 point for that? Yeah, I guess I already started that. I have to continue doing it. Brought up a good point. So the good point here is, if you force the like trans, the females who like claim to be men, if you make them do sports against the regular cis women, then they're just gonna dominate them. So like you run into the same problem by keeping people with their biological sex. So like throwing like a little hissy fit about it doesn't really solve the problem.
Legal because they're on hormones or they're taking some sort of testosterone or something like that. So you run into the same problem when they're competing as like who they were assigned, what their gender was biologically at birth. You see what I'm saying?
Are you saying a biological woman
Yeah.
competing?
Against a trans man who was previously a woman.
Hold on a second. Let's just stick with the term biology here because
Okay.
using gender terms. So a biological woman
Yes.
competing against a biological.
Okay, no, that's confusing. So like, he said let's use the biological terms, and then he says biological woman. So what he should have said is biological female, just like right here on the sign it says biological male. That is another deliberate misleading. Sneaky Steve. Sneaky Steve.
Woman, yes, who was on like,
Steroids.
yeah, like,
Okay.
or testosterone.
Yeah.
Which would improve their performance.
Right.
Yeah. So it runs into the same problem in my sense.
Which is exactly what we're allowing with the trans athletes. So the reason I bring that up is because I don't know if you know this, but the International Olympic Committee doesn't require any hormone replacement therapy at all.
Okay.
None. And what happened with Leah Thomas, and this was shocking to me, was now a big reason that the IOC does that is they say, well, we punt it to the organizations of the individual sports.
Oh, now
And
now
you
he's
and
just
I both
pivoting
know-
because he had a good point. Now he's just pivoting away. Disappointing me, dog. You're disappointing me.
Okay.
None. And what happened with Leah Thomas,
Yes, who was on like,
steroids.
yeah, like,
Okay.
or testosterone.
Yeah.
Which would improve their performance.
The International Olympic Committee doesn't require any hormone replacement therapy at all.
Okay.
None.
Or testosterone. Biological women compete with transgender men who were once women. You're essentially pitting women against, in your mind, other women who are just basically doping legally because they're on hormones or they're taking some sort of testosterone or something like that. So you run into the same problem when they're competing as like who they were assigned, what their gender was biologically at birth. You see what I'm saying?
Are you saying a biological woman
Yeah.
competing?
Against a trans man who was previously a woman.
Hold on a second. Let's just stick with the term
Okay, and then the deliberate misleading happens.
biology here because
Okay.
using gender terms. So a biological woman
Yes.
competing against.
So like what he's doing, he's like taking hold of the conversation. Like this stoner guy, he earned a point, and then Steven's like, "Gotcha," and then he's using his judo techniques to like pivot away to a new reality.
a biological
Woman, yes, who was on like,
steroids.
yeah, like,
Okay.
or testosterone.
Yeah.
Which would improve their performance.
Right.
Yeah. So it runs into the same problem in my sense.
Which is exactly what we're allowing with the trans athletes. So the reason I bring that up is because I don't know if you know this, but the International Olympic Committee doesn't require any hormone replacement.
Yeah, not sufficiently related to what they're talking about. Therefore, it's pivoting.
Therapy at all.
Okay.
None. And what happened with Leah Thomas, and this was shocking to me, was now a big reason that the IOC does that is they say, well, we punt it to the organizations of the individual sports. And you and I both know, of course, being on campus, I think you're probably to the left of center, but I don't think you're someone who believes in stifling speech or ideas, or shutting people down.
That would be a bad thing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But we both know that smaller sports organizations are more prone to succumbing to the pressure of activist groups, right? So the IOC says, we'll punt it to these organizations. With the NCAA, what happened, and I'm just using this because it's the most recent example.
Yeah.
What happened is the NCAA had rules. They said, you know what, we're going to go up to the national swimming organizing body. I believe it's USA Swimming. I may have that wrong. I think it's USA Swimming.
Okay, sure.
They said 36 months of hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
The NCAA said, we're not going to do that. You just have to tell us you're doing 12 months of hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
And you just need to submit one test within 4 weeks of competition, and you're only allowed to have the testosterone levels twice that of a normal female.
Okay.
I believe it's 5 either nanomoles per deciliter or 5 nanograms per deciliter. And they allowed it
like
to
a
10.
Ceiling?
It's a ceiling.
So you can't go past that.
You can't go but for a trans athlete, you can't go past 10.
Okay.
Which is 2 times that of a woman. So it would be like you going into a sport. Have you ever played sports?
I have, yes.
Okay, so what sport? What's your sport?
Basketball.
Oh, basketball.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, you can't find a juicer in professional basketball, right?
No.
No, of course not. They're all natural.
Yeah.
But it would be like telling LeBron James, or it would be like telling, I don't follow college basketball, but whoever's good in college basketball, it'd be like saying, okay, look, you're not allowed to do steroids. You say you're not doing them for 12 months, and then within 4 weeks, you just submit a blood test where you only have 2 times the testosterone levels of your male counterparts.
Okay.
We always talk about steroids in sports, right?
Yeah.
And how it's become easier to beat these sort of tests, and the tests become more elaborate. This is a cheat sheet to transgender males, to biological males claiming to be women.
No, it is a good point. Like, there are people who are like willing to say, I'm a woman, just to take advantage of all the benefits that being trans brings. So 1407. Good point. +1.
How to cheat. We're only going to need a test within 4 weeks, and you're still allowed to have 2 times the levels.
Okay.
And even then, what's also important is, and I understand what you're saying. I guess I don't know what your position is. My position is biological males compete with biological males. Biological females compete with biological females. That was a position of even modern transgender activists until just really 2-3 years ago, because all sports are different. That's biology.
Yeah.
Now we're at a point where we're trying to make the argument that, well, if they undergo hormone replacement therapy for a year, they don't have the, and that's also not true. The medical literature, this isn't up to date with the data. They only lose about 5% of their strength. We're talking not just strength.
I mean,
we're talking about ligament strength.
It's
about 5% according to the medical literature. They lose about 5% in 12 months. Okay, I've seen it as high as 7.
Okay.
The most legitimate study that I've seen, the most legitimate study is
what
5.
You're measuring, like physical strength or endurance,
physical
or oxygen
strength,
capacity,
muscle area, total muscle volume.
Let's see. So I want to award him a point for like calling out that that 5% number it's pretty specious. Like, he links some study here, but I'm not gonna click on it. And this guy never even knew there was a study below his head. So how do you think he feels? Let's rewind.
Months. Okay, I've seen it as high as 7.
Okay.
The most legitimate study that I've seen, the most legitimate study is
what
5.
You're measuring, like physical strength or endurance,
physical
or oxygen
strength,
capacity,
muscle area, total muscle volume, muscle density.
See, volume and density
connective tissue strength, for example, male connective tissue strength, ligament strength, tendon strength is 80% higher. Red blood cell count, VO2
throwing
max,
numbers out now.
overall.
So this is Gish Gallop. He's just like throwing out random numbers and there's like some crazy shit at the bottom of the screen. Oh shit! Oh god, science! It's blowing me away, dog. But no, for real, it's the Gish Gallop. He's a galloping Gus. Gish Gallop. Very good name. I love whoever came up with that. They are my best friend in real life.
Lung capacity, lever arms, longer, bone density. The list goes on and on and on. These don't go away with 12 months. They don't even go away with 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue things like wingspan, bone density, all that stuff is the same. But like certain, rather
But you'd
than
argue
looking
bone
at-
density is the same between a male and a female?
Oh no, I was saying after you are on hormones for a while, your wingspan, things like that sort of are different. Like your height is not necessarily going to change, although that does happen sometimes, I think. But I don't think that's a result of being on estrogen.
You're saying, your wingspan wouldn't change exactly.
Yeah.
You would still enjoy the lengthened wingspan of being a biological male.
But I do think there are certain physical attributes that do change. Like as far as like strength is a big one. Like they'd be like how many push-ups you can do. There's studies where they'll test pre and post
It
transition.
gets lower.
Yeah. Well, it evens out pretty much.
Problem is,
Not in the studies.
they're obviously talking past each other. I mean, I think that was always going to happen. It's always destined to happen.
It's lower.
Yeah. Well, it evens out pretty much for the most part.
Not in the studies that I've seen. No.
I guess so. Yeah. And
So he's saying that, like, some things change and some things don't, and that's why it evens out. Because obviously, you can't change your height, you can't change your wingspan, but like you would lose muscle if you went on HRT.
this is another one where we can just go back and forth, your word, my word. I don't really want to camp out on that. I think we can just sort of agree to disagree.
Well, I think the data is pretty clear, and I
Okay,
think, let's
I'll give him a good sport point, because like getting off of that like back and forth where he can't put up any links to studies at the bottom of the screen doesn't work. And apparently this guy does put link, like he comes with a phone like full of facts, so I'm very interested to see that one. But yeah, you get a good sport point.
say that you're correct.
Yeah.
Let's say that there are studies out there that show after a year of testosterone suppression, everything is the same. Let's assume that's correct. I don't believe so, but let's assume it's correct.
Yeah, so like he's putting words in his mouth. Like obviously not everything is going to be the same, but like some traits are going to be the same and some traits aren't. That's what he's saying would balance out. And then also the fact that there's trans women and trans men.
Still doesn't bring us to a solution, does it?
Not a very clean one, no. But
So what are you suggesting? I'm saying that biological males compete with biological males because I believe someone also needs to advocate for biological females. That's why Title IX exists.
Yeah.
Your suggestion is?
My suggestion is to let like trans athletes play with. So like I just say let trans men compete in men's sports and let trans women compete in women's sports.
Right.
Solely
So
from
when you say trans men, again, you're using a gender. So you're arguing that gender and sex are the same.
no, not necessarily.
Well, because you're saying
Deliberate misleading. Stop doing this. Stop like playing. I hate it when trans people do this too. When they like deliberately like conflate sex and gender. But now Steven's doing that. And so I won't allow it. Not on my stream. Deliberate misleading.
trans men compete in men's sports, let trans women. What you're really saying is biological males who identify as women compete in women's sports. And sports are separated by biology. There's no getting around that. So if you were saying...
Yeah, but it's not like a constant, like a law of nature or something like that. That can change.
It has been a constant,
but it's
for
not,
a very good reason. It's the same reason we have weight classes. It's the same reason we have age divisions.
It's not like gravity that you can't. You know what I mean? Like it's a construct that we can morph if we find the social utility for it. Do you see what I'm saying?
And what would the social utility be?
So,
to upending based on sparse or non-existent clinical data.
So here's the actual social utility. It would actually make women's sports interesting because, like, there would be men competing in them, and men are just better at sports. Like, that's just the truth. Like, people would tune in to women's basketball if it was like a bunch of like roided out trans guys, like, you know, like punching each other. I'd watch that shit.
You're mentioning, what would the upside be to allowing biological males to beat biological women? Because you know it's not going the other direction. You and I both know that, right? There's the lab study and then there's the real life study. Biological women are not competing and beating men, biological men in sports.
Listen,
it's only going one way.
Biological differences between men and women on general do exist, right? And so I'm definitely not going to argue with that. But when you bring trans people into the equation, I'm looking at it from the perspective of what is going to, like, it's like a harm reduction type of like a perspective that I'm coming at from. So it goes back to my earlier point, which
because like what he means by harm reduction is like trans people are gonna kill themselves if they don't get their way, which just like screams like spoiled little white person.
Is even if you wanted to say, okay, if biological men and biological women compete in like separate sports and then trans people into the equation, I'm looking at it from the perspective of what is going to, like, it's like a harm reduction type of like a perspective that I'm coming at from. So it goes back to my earlier point, which is even if you wanted to say, okay, if biological men and biological women compete in like separate sports and then like it doesn't matter if you transition over or not, you have to compete with who you were biologically assigned with at birth. It still just creates the same problem where women who want to transition.
So Stephen doesn't believe that you are assigned gender at birth. He believes like there is like everyone like has a true like. He just doesn't believe in intersex people. He just doesn't think intersex people exist, basically. And there's just no convincing them unless what you got to do is you sit down Steven Crowder and you tape his eyeballs open and you just force him to watch like futa hentai for like 23 hours straight.
The men have to compete against women, and then it's not fair to the women who are getting, you know, beat up on by this transition, like this trans man who is taking hormones and is taking.
Well, they shouldn't be allowed to compete.
Okay, so you're saying,
yeah,
so
a woman,
is that your opinion?
Yes, a woman who is taking anabolics.
Yeah,
effectively, right?
Is transitioning to
a woman who's taking anabolics. Well, a woman who's taking anabolics.
Sure.
Let's boil this down to biological terms. A woman who's taking.
Wait, hold on. Anabolics? Is that really what? Do trans people take take anal? I know they take anal. Anabolics? So when you call it anabolic steroids, so it is mostly testosterone, but that's only one of the ingredients. What is the drug used in FDM HRT? Okay. So he's right there, but calling it anabolics, like, he's like trying to lead the other person into thinking, it's more deliberate misleading, I guess. Because he's like, oh, they're taking steroids, you're just going to allow them to juice? But the point of them doing that is to get them, like, on the same level as cis men. So you have trans women who are taking testosterone to be equivalent to cis men. And then you have trans women who take estrogen to like downgrade a rank. But what we really have to do is give some women, like regular cis women, extra estrogen to make them super feminine and super shitty at sports, but super good at sex. And then we have to have another league, another division for like cis men who just get like pumped full of testosterone and like become hyper men. Yeah. And they'll call it the XFL. That's a good idea.
Testosterone.
Sure.
No non-trans identifying woman is allowed to do that. They're banned from sport.
Okay.
It's illegal.
Okay.
Should be illegal regardless of how you identify.
Okay.
They shouldn't be allowed to beat up on women, just like a woman shouldn't be allowed to take anabolic steroids and beat up on women.
Okay. And that is a fine position to hold. It's not my position.
That's a harm reduction position. So
It
that's
is,
my
for
harm
sure.
reduction
Yeah,
position.
it is.
What's the harm reduction you're saying, your harm reduction model?
Yeah.
In allowing biological men to beat women?
I would like as many people to participate in sports as possible while still keeping, because like you said, the trans community is a fairly
That's actually
small.
not a good reason. Like, who cares about sports? I don't get why everyone gives so much of a shit about sports, especially women's sports. For some reason, I didn't put... I got rid of dumb point in tier -1. I guess that's fair.
One. This is not a sort of an epidemic or a pandemic like some maybe make it out to be. It's a small.
It's not yet. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not
Sure,
yet.
it's not yet.
Because it's
But
very
I would
new.
rather not act on. And if it does change and it becomes a really big problem, then maybe we can readdress how we sort of go about this.
So let a problem that all data would indicate is likely going to happen. And
So right now, this is like the slippery slope fallacy. And sometimes, like, it's not a fallacy, but I think in this case it is. Because most people are not willing to cut off their dick to win a fucking baseball game. Like, it's just... And hey, if some people want to do that, I think more power to them. Like, it's just a fucking sport. Who gives a fucking shit?
in the small sample sizes that we have, allow that problem to run its course, allow it to rob women of opportunities, allow it to
rob women of opportunities. How about you're robbing trans women of opportunities when you take that away from them? So how dare you, sir? It's not really deliberate and misleading, though. It's just stupid. I'm gonna stick with not taking away points for saying really dumb things, because that's I'm just trying to like make it so the debates are smoother. And like, what is a dumb point and what's even a good point? Like that requires like a whole debate in and of itself each time, and I'm not willing to do that. I honestly should probably get rid of the good point metric.
concussions,
I will next time.
broken orbital bones like we've seen in women's combat sports, because we don't know how bad it'll be yet, and then reverse course if it gets worse.
My argument would be that it is not a problem yet. Once it does become a problem, then we can address it. But as of right now, in the current moment, I don't see it as being problematic.
Yes.
So I think
That is true. That is a true thing, so he will earn a point for that. Good point. Delivered in a calm and reasonable way.
reduction, you are failing to take into account one large group of people.
Okay.
You're taking into account a very small group of people, and I don't think you've conflated gender and sex, which is why modern gender theory is one I disagree with, because it's not a tenable position.
Sure.
Because everything that you have discussed is basically equating gender with sex at that point. That's the only way you can argue that people who identify a certain way should be able to compete with people who are biologically female. But let's say it's 1% of the population that's trans, okay? In your harm reduction approach, who are you ignoring?
Well, I'm assuming from your perspective to be biological women, right? Yeah. But you would have to sort of explain to me why that is the case. If it is 1% of people who are trans,
Well,
you know,
what's the purpose to sports?
why
do we play sports?
Competition. I mean, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't have a philosophical answer for you.
What's
I'm
the
assuming
goal
you
in
do.
sport?
To win, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only goal in
You know,
sport.
have fun along the way, maybe.
And in
Yeah,
debate.
sure. Have fun along the way.
Camaraderie.
But when we're talking about sports and high-level sports like
Yeah.
NCAA, it's not fun.
I mean, they
it's
want
not
to
fun
win,
to be a champion
obviously.
at that
Of
point,
course,
right? It's a very
of course.
difficult life. They've
Yes.
sacrificed a lot.
Yeah.
It's
They've
still a
trained
game,
lot.
bro.
They've run into many complications that people who are not trying to be excellent in their field. I think we would both agree with that, right?
Yes,
It's not really a
definitely.
fun life to be an NCAA silver medalist.
It
right?
takes discipline for
To be
sure.
an Olympic silver medalist and then get your ass
Playing
kicked
a game,
by someone who was a
dog.
man 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So the purpose is to win. Now, that's why sports exist. The NCAA, right? Collegiate sports.
No, wait. So his claim is that the point of sports exist to win. Okay. So that's going in the record. I don't know why he said that. That just made him sound very stupid. The point of sports existence is to win the sport. Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure the function that sports actually play, the way it benefits humans, is it prevents us from killing each other.
What opportunities do those provide? Would we both agree that they're significant?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Scholarships,
school,
paths to careers,
yes, definitely.
coaching.
Yeah.
Okay. So beyond the actual physical harm which can take place in certain sports, with biological men competing against women, what about all the economic harm? What about all the opportunity costs for these women who've trained their whole lives and they miss out?
Well, so
Because far more of them will be affected than transgender individuals.
I guess as a ref, I shouldn't be like debating, but so I won't like attribute any points to this. But goddamn, that is, who cares if they don't get fucking? I didn't get a fucking sports scholarship.
Who
Like you're not fucking entitled to it. Like sorry, princess. Like you didn't get your tennis scholarship to your fucking public college.
don't even
Get over
compete
it.
in sport.
what do you
Get
mean by
wiped
that?
up.
What I mean is if we have 1% of transgender individuals, right, in the population, and not many of them are competing in sports, talking about a harm reduction strategy that at the cost of all of the other women in these sports who are vying for these opportunities, we are acquiescing to biological males in the name of harm reduction, but it's actually probably the most harmful thing we can do for women's sports, for female sports.
I guess my argument for that would just be that,
This is what it should be. Your argument for that should be, who gives a fuck about women's sports? Like, it's just because you hate trans people. And hey, if you want to hate trans people, more power to you. But be honest.
you're talking about, you're framing it in a sense that like trans women are taking opportunities from biological women, I assume is the point here.
They are.
Yeah, I would just say that it's not sort of if you want to make, because I do think there is going to be harm done either way, I will agree, but I think it's it's more of a one-to-one thing. You're making it seem like biological women are going to be hurt exponentially more when it's like if a trans woman takes a biological woman's place, that's a one-to-one sort of trade-off. I mean,
Exactly.
one or the other is going to take that place of the other person. So it's just depending on who you want to favor as, and it just comes down to, I believe, like what
He just blew Student Carter's mind. Like, he doesn't have, like, a response to this. I can't wait to see what he says.
you view it. Like the women's sports thing is sort of a microcosm of the bigger sort of trends. Like it pivots on.
Well, it
what
shows
your
that
opinion
modern
of-
gender theory can't hold water.
Oh, why is that?
Well, because
Nice pivot. Let's see. 24. Now, so, like, strategically, it was smart for him to pivot there. But it does cost you, according to my metrics. And to reiterate, the way the debate rules work is for every like, you just have to like establish them beforehand, and then they're set for the entire duration of the debate. But then in the next debate, you can tailor them to like the individual debates. Anyway.
I've been even at this school and other schools where I said there are only two genders, right? Change my mind. And people go, well, no, gender is separate from sex.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that.
Yeah.
But now you're sitting here arguing gender and sex are interchangeable.
I wouldn't argue they're interchangeable.
Well, you are arguing that in the realm of sport.
Not
Jam those
necessarily.
words in his mouth.
No.
Okay, then please clarify, because I just heard you say that biological males, and then you use the term trans women, which is a gender term, right?
Yes.
Trans women is not a biological
Yes.
term, that's a gender term.
Yes.
So you say people of a gender should be allowed to now identify with whatever sex they choose to
I see what you're
compete.
saying now. So I would like to clarify that then.
Okay.
People who identify as men should be allowed to compete against each other. People who identify as women should be allowed to compete against each other. I make no biological
So a separate division.
distinctions there.
So a separate division then.
No, not a separate division. I just think that
Then it brings us back to the same issue. You're saying
well,
biological males who identify as trans women,
Yes.
a gender term,
yeah.
brings us right back to the same place, should be able to compete against other people who are separated by sex. There is only an exception for the modern transgender theorist, right? Everywhere else it's separated by biology.
No.
I can't compete against women just because I don't say that I'm a woman.
Yeah.
I could tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
look,
so
that's a good point. Like, if you ever need to go pee, just like say you're a woman, you can go in any bathroom now. Like no one will stop you anymore. It's very, very useful.
one, just to that point, I don't think that is something that is really happening. Of people just being like, I'm a man, I'm just going to say I'm a woman and go compete against women, and like I don't think that is a thing that happens. I do believe it is legitimate, like people who are legitimately trying to transition, who want to compete in these sports.
Well, how do you know?
Because I mean, look at Leah Thomas, look at all of the examples that you yourself have cited. I have not seen an example of like a person doing that yet. And if that does happen again, then it becomes a problem, and we figure out a way to address it.
It has happened. And again, just because it hasn't happened yet, that's the argumentum ad novitatum. That's the appeal to novelty, logical fallacy. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
This isn't even because I do want to go back to the thing you were.
Yeah, that's the argumentum ad novitatum. That's the.
That was pretty cringe. So incorrectly calling out fallacy like that. That's another. That's like a -3. That's pretty bad. He's so proud of that appeal to novelty thing, but it's really not applicable here. Incorrectly calling out fallacy. That's gotta hurt.
That's the appeal to novelty, logical fallacy. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
This isn't even because I do want to go back to the thing you were saying about the men and women, the biological.
Yes. I don't understand how your position. I don't understand how your position is tenable if gender and sex are separate.
So my only point that I would like to make is when you say men's and women's sports.
Yes.
I would like that to just simply mean people who identify as men, people who identify as women.
But it doesn't.
Not right now, no. But it could.
And it doesn't because of biological differences. Sports are separated due to biological differences.
They are right now, yes.
And there's a reason for that.
Well, I mean, not
for the safety of women.
Well, and then it just goes back to the same argument. We kind of are going back to that.
No, it's not going back to the same argument. You haven't addressed it. For the safety of women.
Well, we went back and forth on the data of does it actually harm women in the sense of like, because I mean, obviously you mentioned like broken orbital bones and all that stuff in combat sports, which injuries are going to happen in the realm of, obviously an orbital bone is a pretty serious, I mean, that's a bad one, but injuries are going to happen.
Like, it's a combat sport. The whole point is to hurt the other person. Like, if these women aren't prepared to get hurt, then they shouldn't be participating in combat sports. It's pretty simple. I know it seems pretty lazy that I'm just like giving this guy all these good points, but the thing is, he's basically not saying anything. He's just like silent, and then he makes a good point, and then he just lets like Steven ramble forever.
In the realm of combat sports, citing that
Let me
as
ask you
being
this, because
dangerous
maybe
to
we're just.
women.
Do you not believe that there would be more injuries occurring in contact sports if biological men just competed, if there were no men and women's divisions? Do you honestly not believe that that would drastically increase the chances of injury?
Well, you know, I think.
Come on, we have people who are walking CTE, right? The lifespan of an O lineman is somewhere in their 40s or 50s in the NFL, and these are 315, 340-pound men, and they're still having to deal with being hit. Do you honestly believe that if we didn't have men...
So, like why doesn't he care about, like, protecting the men? He only cares about protecting the woman. So, again, this is, like, the conservative impulse to be very paternalistic and, you know, take care of the women because they're too stupid. Like, cis women aren't really, like, speaking out about this. It's mostly, like, conservative, like, debate bros who are, like, super triggered about trans women in women's sports.
Women's division, that a female quarterback being sacked, that a female lineman, you really don't think that there would be an increase in dramatic injuries?
Oh, no, there would, yeah, definitely. Good. But I would like to note that, like, obviously,
it hasn't happened yet.
Well, of course, there is, you know, differences in men and women, like a big linebacker versus small. But I would like to point out that whenever you do talk about sort of biological differences between...
Why do you do this?
Sorry, yeah, I don't know. But whenever you talk about...
Well, do you mean to do this, or was that accidental?
Let's not read too deeply into it. I don't think it's really anything
well,
that much
hold on a second. Is it, because I am saying, I think it matters. Biological males.
Well,
but you did this.
Yeah, so let me get to the point. Is that when you do talk about biological distinctions, what you're really saying are physical, chemical distinctions between people, right? Like, I could say that, a 6'6", 230-pound like linebacker versus like, you know, a college, like a freshman of the same age who's like 5'5" and like 180 pounds or whatever, is not going to be a fair matchup, right? But they're both men. But when you say biological differences, you're talking about physical, you know, competitive advantages that people have regardless of biology. I mean, sorry, regardless of what they are assigned at birth, as far as their
Regardless of
gender
what
goes.
biology determines them to be at birth.
But you know, it determines them to an extent. But
Hold on a
obviously,
second. Do you believe that
there's-
biological male and biological female is assigned at birth, or do you believe that the gender assigned at birth is what can be changed? Because this is very new. You need to understand this.
Oh, yeah.
The students I spoke with 2 years ago
Yeah.
at this school, the professors, never in their wildest dreams would have said biological sex assigned at birth.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that sex is being assigned rather than being intrinsic? Because that's a
No.
whole new thing.
The chromosomes that you are born with are the ones that you have, and it's not a socially constructed thing.
Okay.
You have those chromosomes. It determines a lot about your physical makeup and stuff like that.
Good.
But, you know, and obviously there's intersex people, and it's a spectrum and all that, and it's not a binary, but it is intrinsic. It is biological. You
Yeah.
can't, you know, just say that you don't have these certain chromosomes. But I don't think that's the argument people are making. So that would be my, you know.
All right, well, you don't think what is the argument? Every single
That-
person in this country thinks that it's unfair for biological males to compete against biological females,
Oh, no,
regardless of how
not
they
in the
identify.
realm of competition. I'm just simply saying, I don't think anybody is making the argument that you are not born with chromosomes that give you certain, you know, like that
But then
differentiate.
do you understand, though, that
biology.
then your position is untenable? Because
Well,
you're
how
saying
so?
there is something that is innate, there is something that is intrinsic,
Yeah,
right? There
for
is something
sure.
that's immutable.
Yeah.
But we need to throw that out the window as it relates to sports and go by gender, which is societal.
I see your point, but the problem is that
Sports are not separated by how you identify. They are separated by immutable physical characteristics for the reason of safety and fairness and competition.
So-
can we agree on that?
Well-
That's why they're separated by biology.
I might agree, but if you're going off of specifically, so your definition of why they are separated is immutable physical characteristics
Yes.
for people's safety.
That was pretty bad. I haven't been doing this too much, but he did slur his words just now, and it's been a while since I assigned any points, so slurred. I guess. I mean, these would fall under very common mistakes and errors. So slurred word -1.
Of why they are separated is immutable physical characteristics.
Hold on. Okay.
Characteristics
Yes.
for people's safety. I would just
And
make the
fairness.
argument, and fairness, right? I would just make the argument, okay, so we should have smaller men and women compete against each other, and women who are at a better physical, because you would
We
acknowledge
do. We
that.
have Division 1 versus Division 3, and we have weight classes. Perfect example.
Sure, yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I agree.
But you would not cross the biological lines to like the gender, you know, the sex.
No, because the difference is so vast.
I mean, not for everybody though, right? I mean, because if you
Yes,
want to make the
it
argument that it
absolutely
is
is.
for the safety of people,
It absolutely
there's
is.
a
It's
lot of women who
unbelievably.
could
The
beat
gap
up.
is so much larger between men and women. It's not even close. I mean, you can look at again, when you're looking at just Leah Thomas as a
Yeah.
recent example,
Yeah.
talking about 503rd, I believe, in the 200 or 500 something place,
Yeah.
if that time were posted by when he was still competing
Yeah.
as a man, not even top 800 in the 500.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a huge, and you're talking about winning
Yeah.
one of them, placing fifth in another. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, even just, do you think Serena Williams and Venus Williams, you think they would do well against top guys?
Oh no, I should actually clarify
Do you think
that.
they would even do well against middling guys?
I'm not sure about middling guys, but I will say.
Do you think
at
they would
a
do
high
well against
level-
not good tennis
At a
players?
high level, there is a complete difference between men and women as far
Yeah.
as like physical advantages.
My point is the best female athletes
Yeah.
in the world aren't even close to middling to low-end male athletes.
That's a Can you substantiate that claim? That's
Yeah, Venus and Serena Williams. They played tennis against a guy who was ranked 204th, I believe, and he beat both of them in one afternoon.
It's
Yeah, I'll give him a point for that. That's pretty fair. That was a good point. +1.
And he was a drunk.
I feel like that's an anecdotal maybe point to make, right?
It's not an anecdote. You just asked me, can I point to an example?
Yeah.
And then
Well,
the empirical would be, okay, so the empirical would be the times that I just gave you for Leah Thomas, right? I can give you other examples like Mary Gregory in powerlifting, the squat. The world record female squat versus male squat is a 400-pound difference. When you're talking about men in the same weight class who are competing against each other, you're talking about infinitesimal, right, amounts of weight. You're talking about 2-3 pounds. You're talking about the world record deadlift going up, if you're lucky, by 4 pounds, maybe every 2 years, right? That's the level of competition.
Yeah.
The difference between a man and a woman is over 400 pounds. I just gave you the times, right, the empirical. As far as the swim times, you could actually look at every single swim time, track time, right?
That's for like the top athletes in the field. Like there's tons of ranks below that. So kind of doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Decathlon time, you could look at every single shot put, you could look at every single long jump, high jump. You could look
kind
at
of a gish job too, isn't it? Because he keeps on this stoner guy. He's not going to agree with anything Steven's saying here. So, if he does a gish job again, I'll give him a full 3 points for that.
Verticals, you can look at connective tissue strength, like I said, which is about 80% higher in men. So you can look at all those. That's the empirical.
Sure.
And I'm giving you an example of the two best female tennis players who have ever existed were both just absolutely washed in an afternoon by a drunken 200-something ranked guy.
Yeah.
Come on.
So
it's a big difference.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say in
Let's not do the college thing. This is a big difference.
Yeah. In a high-level competition.
No, high-level women against low-level men. It's not even close.
Well, and to be honest, I don't know if that super matters.
The best female athletes in the world get routed by adolescent boys. Do you know that? The world women's, right? The world female soccer champions, they lose almost always to high school boy teams.
That is pretty hilarious.
So I don't know if that's super. I feel like we're kind of getting off on a separate path here as far as like.
Well, no, I'm just addressing your argument where you said,
Yeah.
well, the difference is depending. And I said, no, it's such a huge chasm
Yeah.
between biological males and females that's the reason they're separated. I was addressing your point.
I would still make the argument that the chasm is not as big as you make it out to be.
Okay.
But my word against your word, I don't want to look at anything. I would argue that it is not as big as, because obviously,
Sure.
I asked for evidence, and there is a lot of, I'm sure, specific examples.
Assuming that I'm
the
not
Williams
lying.
Sisters. Oh, I don't think you're lying. I think all of those examples that you gave are very well, this could be true. But
The
again,
empirical and the anecdotal, right? You recognize that I gave you the empirical, what can be measured in a lab, what can be measured as
you just did. But I would say that I would discount the anecdote.
argument where you said,
Yeah.
well, the difference is depending. And I said, no, it's such a huge chasm
Yeah.
between biological males and females that's the reason they're separated. I was addressing your point.
I would still make the argument that the chasm is not as big as you make it out to be.
Okay.
But my word against your word, I don't want to look at anything.
Yeah, he did. So Steven did provide a lot of examples. He's kind of rejecting valid evidence at this point.
I would argue that it is not as big as, because obviously,
Sure.
I asked for evidence, and there is a lot of, I'm sure, specific examples.
Assuming that I'm not
the
lying.
Williams Sisters. Oh, I don't think you're lying. I think all of those examples that you gave are very well, this could be true. But
The
again,
empirical and the anecdotal, right? You recognize that I gave you the empirical, what can be measured in a lab, what can be measured as far as times across the board.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
the
yeah.
anecdotal of the best female athletes competing against middling drunken men and still losing.
yeah, and
female
I'm
soccer
fairly
teams.
more confident that the lab, the numbers that you give are not totally accurate.
Yeah. Okay.
And then as far as the individual cases, they are individual cases, so I'm not going to,
So we'll discount the
turn around
empirical and discount the anecdotal.
I
And
would
now it's the
discount-
broad and now it's the brutal and nothing is safe, Isaac.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that was a good framing you just did. But I would say that I would discount the anecdotal. Yes, I will acknowledge that. But the empirical, I do believe, I have seen a lot of evidence that points towards my point of view.
What if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, then I would be okay with it because I feel like I would have at least tried to protect the rights of all people to play sports.
Except for
Unlike you, well, I mean, you were the one who said that you would not let trans men compete in sports.
You mean women? You mean
Women
biological
who are
females who are taking
transitioning
drugs?
over. Yes.
For the same reason? Yeah, you just can't take anabolic steroids in the sport.
Yeah.
Now, if you're advocating that we should allow anabolic steroids in sport, fine. How about it?
No, I'm allowed. No,
Yeah, that's
I'm
fair.
advocating that. Like, well,
Which,
I
by
mean,
the way, I'm not even necessarily against.
yeah. Oh, you're not.
I'm not even necessarily against it.
Yeah,
No, I think
yeah.
either we need to have really, really strict testing across the board, or no testing and let the game begin.
Okay.
Seems reasonable.
So, just so I.
Is that reasonable? It's got to be one or the other. We have shitty testing right now that people can bypass.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, honestly, I don't really have a super.
Yeah, I'll give you a good point for that one.
Like a hard and fast opinion on that
Oh,
specifically.
I have very strong opinions on that.
It would probably be a lot of fun to see a bunch of roided athletes go up against each other, but
Especially sports like baseball. Who
oh
gives,
yeah,
Who cares?
I mean I don't watch baseball.
You just
so that
want to
would
hit
be-
them. You want to watch them hit home runs. They're not
Yeah.
hitting anybody.
I would watch baseball if that was the case. So
Yeah.
I think you won me over on that.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. Baseball would be less boring if we
yeah.
just let them roid.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
It's
what?
like the Tour de France. Did you see that? The Tour de France. You know, they just excoriated Lance
Hey,
Armstrong.
he said that was another explicit concession, it seems like. What was it? Explicit concession. +1.
Wrong.
Oh.
And I don't remember the number, but because now they can retroactively go and test the samples.
Really?
Right, with modern testing methods.
Yeah.
And they tested all of the other guys who he beat, who sued him and were complaining, and they had to go down to like number, I think it was 14 to find someone who was clean. And
course.
now none of the records are being set. They were all
That's,
set a few years ago. So no, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And by the way, you
Yeah.
know what's interesting about that? The difference of a man on steroids, picture the most jacked out dude, on the bodybuilding stage, does not enjoy anywhere near the exponential hormonal advantage that a male enjoys over a female. Arnold in his prime does not have a hormonal advantage over you that you do over her or her or her.
I don't think that's
It's
true.
very big of a chasm.
I could probably concede to that. I think that's probably maybe true. I don't think it sways
that
my,
looks
because I
pretty
guess
weak
my
to me.
question to you.
But that is another explicit concession. Wow, this guy is very humble. He's like gonna eke out a win with these humble points.
Would just be how do you address like the Leah Thomases and all of the like transgender athletes who want to compete? It's your opinion is strictly, just so I'm clear, biological.
I'll
men
give you two.
Okay.
Okay. So one is, and you're not going to like it, and you're going to think I'm a dick. You were competing as a man 2 years ago. You continue to compete as a man.
Okay.
Okay? That's the only fair way to do it. Or, if I go along with the idea, which you have presented, and your peers here have presented, and your professors have presented,
Yeah.
that gender and sex are different, then you have to change it based on gender and create a third division. Or, let me ask you this, actually, it might help. How many genders are there?
How many genders are there?
More than 2?
I don't know.
More than 3?
It's pretty bad.
Why does it matter? I guess is my question.
Like, then you have to just create as many divisions as there are genders. So one of those 2. You compete based on biology like we always have because it's what's safe, it's what's fair, it's what protects women. Or if we want to go with sort of modern gender theory, which I don't agree with, but I would allow for it in sport where, okay, I think Facebook has you up to 50-something genders now,
Sure.
it may even be higher than that.
Sure.
Great, 50-something sports divisions.
Okay.
Compete in those against your gender.
It feels a bit like hyperbole to me because I don't feel like there is a cry for that for there to be 50. Like obviously,
No, of course there isn't. They want to beat up on women.
Yeah, but I'm addressing your point that you're making currently, which is that I don't think that is an issue or a problem or anybody is
Okay,
calling
create a
for that
third
to
one.
happen.
Create a third one where all the people can take all the hormones they want.
Is this your solution for the problem, or
It's one of 2. My solution is you go with biology because sports have been separated by biology.
Yeah.
If we need to protect trans athletes, I don't really know what that necessarily means. I don't know how they're going to be harmed by not being allowed to dominate women at a swim meet. Create a third division.
I mean, I would argue trans people do get they're the target of hate crimes fairly frequently, more so than your average person.
It's not a hate crime to not let them compete.
Oh no, I'm not talking about not letting them compete. I'm just talking about hate crimes in general.
Okay, not
if you want to talk about
pivoting,
the
but,
protection
like,
of.
why would you even bring that up? That's totally irrelevant. 39, 20, pivoting.
Trans people.
But how are you protecting them by putting women, biological females at risk? I don't see that as a form of protection.
Well, so I think what it all kind of comes down to, and this is why I think that at the end of the day, women's sports like are sort of and this is not me sort of conceit because I still do, but at the end of the day, it's very important, I think, that you affirm somebody's gender identity as they identify with it. So I think it is harmful for the trans athletes to be told, like, if they identify as male, that they are not.
Yeah.
And so I see that.
You just said male.
Uh-huh.
That's sex. That's not gender.
Oh, sorry. Whatever is the gender
No, you
term.
can't keep it straight, can you?
I mean, it's
Yeah, see, like you made a mistake. I guess losing train of thought. Or misuse a word. And I want to give. It's not really a fallacy. He doesn't need any more points.
Silly. It's a little silly, isn't it? When we get down to a point for you to say, you said trans men before.
Yeah.
Hold on, this is, and I want to wrap this up with here, because this isn't a gotcha. This is me trying to. I don't fully understand your argument.
And then as long as I can respond after, you can.
Well, because we do have to get going. So
Sure.
I think you just presented your kind of closing sentiment here. But it matters because the very first thing you did when you sat down. Do you remember what it was that you said?
I do
when
not.
I said you said you had a problem with the wording.
Yes.
And the problem that you had with the wording was that I kept saying biological males.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you said we should use the term trans women. Right?
Yeah.
But right now you just reverted back to saying they identify as males. So you yourself, the biggest problem that you had when you sat down here.
It wasn't the biggest problem. It was the first thing I said, but it
Why would Steven say that's not a gotcha? That was obviously a gotcha.
wasn't the biggest.
We said that your primary issue was with the wording.
I don't think it was primary. I don't think that's what I said.
Okay, it's the first issue. It's,
Like
it's
first
the first
chronologically.
grievance that you issued.
Sure, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But right now, you just committed the same sin.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe I got my words mixed up, but I'm not going to sit here and claim that, like.
You didn't get your words mixed up. You were being very articulate. And I think you've been articulate this whole time. I think we disagree.
Well, thank you. Yes.
But I really do think that you've been articulate, and I think you've been. I mean, you're probably the kind of, I don't know, you're probably not old enough now to say I would grab a beer with you and we could sit there and
I'm
talk.
21, so yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right, well, sometime we could sit down and grab a beer.
I would love it.
But you just did the same thing. And that's my point with this. I just don't think there's any intellectual consistency to it whatsoever. You can't say, well, the term trans woman, because it's gender, it's different from sex, and then say they're allowed to compete with biological females. And then you just, and you've done this several times, you just said who identify as female or identify as male.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
Steven was trying, he was like doing that deliberate misleading stuff over and over and over. I guess this one is done though. Let's tally it up real quick. Gotta get some Italian music. Okay, minus 11, that's really not too bad. But I think this other guy might have won. So this guy's strategy was basically just like being silent for like most of it and letting Steven just talk himself into a hole. I think it worked. Honestly, It's too late now, but I probably should have given him another -2 for rejecting valid evidence. But yeah, that fucking deliberate misleading shit. Steven's gotta quit that shit. So, this next one should be even more exciting because, it's like this guy is like he's a neo-socialist. So he's like, he comes out of the gate like ready to fight. Like he has all the shit pulled up on his phone.
NCBI.
And I had to wonder.
That's right, Steven.
Monacelli is a contributing writer at Rolling Stone and the Daily Beast, where he specializes in leftist talking points and attacking college students.
Oh wait, and let me just record this stuff.
He's even made an appearance.
Oh, and I should change the name now. So, Steven Monacelli. How's that look? Oh, God. A little more. Good enough.
On CNN's New Day.
That's right.
Also, this noted Inspector Gadget impressionist who cosplays as Indiana Jones enthusiast had clearly been waiting for Change My Mind to come to UNT, the Harvard of Denton County, for quite some time, and he just couldn't hide his enthusiasm.
All right, good. You spell it PH or V?
The V.
Same way, very nice. Fewer letters means a cooler name. Last name?
Monacelli, I'll spell it for you.
Okay.
Monacelli.
So, German.
Italian.
Boy, missed all of that one.
Missed it by that much.
Just a little bit, but you know, both those countries have a certain history for a certain type of politics, but we're not here to talk about that today.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't know how I got that one wrong. It's almost like I wasn't even trying.
Oh, look, the sense of humor mobile. It's not stopping here.
So, Steve.
I guess this isn't part of the debate, but man, that was pretty big cope. Pretty big cope right there.
Steven, Steve, how do you prefer?
Steven.
By the way, I like this this jacket. Can I?
Thanks. Yeah, go for it.
Is it a raincoat or is
It's
it
just like a cotton jacket, been like I guess surplus.
Okay.
Military
Well, the whole
surplus.
outfit works.
Thanks.
So, Steven, I don't know how familiar you are at all with what we do with this kind of installment is, but it's basically a way where we can hopefully rationalize our positions on controversial topics. A lot of the times, people can have somewhat rational conversations on topics that maybe don't evoke an emotional response, and then it all goes out the window, as you've seen here on college campuses with dancing Yoda and people throwing milkshakes and screaming and all these kinds of things, which we generally like to avoid.
Now, spoiler alert, this is about to go sideways very quickly.
So today's topic is one obviously we planned for a while, but now it's in the news because of Leah Thomas. I don't believe that biological males should be allowed to compete with women, biological females in women's sports. If you disagree with me, I'm more than happy to hear your case and let you change my mind.
So I guess before we get into it, what is your definition of the term biological female? Is that something
Pivoting right out of the gate. I love it. I love it. Because that has not a whole lot to do with like what the question that he asked. Pivoting. -2.
Would include people who are assigned female at birth that were born intersex.
So this is interesting that you're bringing up this point intersex. You're talking about the 0.01% of the population.
It's about 1.5, 1.7, because there are surgeries that are done to babies when they're born,
Yeah.
and then they assign them a gender.
So let me address 2 different points here.
Sure.
First off, what I'm saying with biological males and females is the overwhelming majority of people, of course, across the globe since the beginning of time, who are born as a male, born as a female. You can go not only by chromosomes, but secondary sex
So, like,
characteristics.
if there's
Hold on, let me
are there
hold on a
100
second.
people here?
Hold on, let me finish. And then I'll address your second point.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Sure.
So doctors, for example, fill out male or female. Now we're talking about sex, right? We're not talking about identified gender. I'm assuming that you would agree
So you
that
agree
sex is
there's
a
a-
biological term and gender is
There's a
Steven's
difference.
rambling.
social.
Difference.
He's just talking for like 40 minutes without saying anything. He's cutting off this guy. I won't give him an interruption multiplier, but I will give him a rambling docked.
I understand that's how gender theory is presented, certainly in gender studies on college campus.
Sure.
With intersex, it's about 0.01% of the population, and the vast majority of them,
Once again, it's
the vast majority of them don't require any kind of a sex change.
That's actually not an accurate
It
statistic.
is an accurate statistic.
I can pull up
and
the
I'll make
Google
all the
statistic
references available.
right now. It's 1.5%.
1.5% of the population is not intersex.
Well, they're born that
And
way.
even then, a very small percentage of them are improperly assigned with a primary sex at birth. They usually have
they're-
primary sexual characteristics, okay? So primary sexual characteristics, and very few have to end up going with some kind of a sex change operation later in life. Would we
Because
agree
it's
on
often
that?
done when they're children or when they're babies.
Right, or they're assigned male, female at birth, even if they're intersex.
Yeah, I guess
by a
that's
doctor.
what I'm trying to get at. Are you talking
So
about
what I'm
people
dealing
who are
with, if we
assigned-
separate that, intersex, okay? So let's say we
Well,
allow
why should we?
intersex to no, I'm saying let's say we allow intersex to compete in the division they choose.
How do you prove that they're in? How do you even get to that question of are you or are you not? Are you asking then that there has to be a box that people have to tick that they were intersex?
I'm confused by you presenting the argument here because you asked me about intersex.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is there are edge cases here that I don't think that your presentation actually encompasses. And
I just
furthermore,
encompassed it.
so if people
what is
are
intersex?
allowed, so that someone who is born with both female and male sex
I
characteristics.
gotta assign some points.
There you go. Now you've got it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then
You just
there are
checked the box.
surgeries that are
you
done
just
to
check the
them.
box.
But someone would have to ask them that.
Yes.
So are you proposing that people are asked that?
What I'm saying is if someone is intersex, let's allow that to be an exception.
So how
let's
do
say
we
that someone
know
who's
that that is
intersex
the
can compete
case?
in any division they want to.
How do we know
They would
that?
have to declare if they're intersex.
So you're
And
at
they would be submitted. They would obviously be examined by a doctor, just
Okay.
as the women are in women's sports and men are in men's sports. Just as they have to submit to.
So he's like trying to gish gallop basically, and this guy, this other Steven, is like blocking him. I haven't seen that technique yet. I like it. I don't want to give him like a full gish gallop because the gish gallop's getting cut off. So I guess I'll just give him a gish gallop. I think I feel like I owe him a gish gallop from the last one, honestly. -3.
Not only blood sampling for drug tests, hair follicle sampling, often nail scrapings, right? We both know that physicals are conducted in all sports to separate.
Why the hell is he
for
talking
what?
about this?
Sex, right? To separate for weight, to separate for.
Look at that face. That's
When I was
funny
playing
face.
sports when I was a kid, no one ever inspected my genitals.
Really?
No.
You never had to turn your head and cough?
Well, that wasn't for doing sports. That's called a physical. That's a medical thing that was separate from being able to do sports.
Yeah, so you never had to do a full medical?
I mean,
So you must not have played sports at a high level.
They
Because
weren't really
everyone
concerned
has to
about-
pass a medical.
So-
You do realize that at Division I sports you would have to pass a medical. You know why?
so the medical would be a description of your genitals. Would that?
It would include it.
It would include a written description and a verbal description.
Yes.
Really?
This
Really?
medical examination, yeah, would include the description of your vitals,
Okay.
of your health,
Okay.
of your health parameters.
So I guess now that we've gone through that, what is?
But we haven't gone through that.
What is
Man,
the reason?
It's like the smugness and like the venom, like it's just dripping off every sentence. Oh, I love this. I love this. I gotta give him some points though. Let's rewind the tape.
So you're at.
And they would be submitted. They would obviously be examined by a doctor, just as the women are in women's sports and men are in men's sports. Just as they have to submit to not only blood sampling for drug tests, hair follicle sampling, often nail scrapings, right? We both know that physicals are conducted in all sports.
Yeah, none of that's going to determine your gender, though.
Sex, right? To separate for weight, to separate for...
When I was playing sports when I was a kid, no one ever inspected my genitals.
Really?
No.
You never had to turn your head and cough?
Well, that wasn't for doing sports. That's called a physical. That's a medical thing that was separate from being able to do sports.
Yeah, so you never had to do a full medical?
I mean...
So you must not have played sports at a high level.
Full medical? What? He's like, he doesn't even know what he's saying anymore. That was a misuse of word. Full medical? What the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah, everyone has to pass a medical. So, you do realize that at Division
Come on. So I need to start like recording blocks, like when they like prevent the enemy from doing like an attack. Because this guy, he hasn't really like done a lot of moves yet. The Stephen Monacelli, but he's like kind of biding his time and just like negating all of Steven Crowder's stuff. Very interesting.
Sports, you would have to pass a medical. You know
so
why?
so the medical would be a description of your genitals. Would that?
It would include it.
It would include a written description and a verbal description.
Yes.
Really?
This medical examination, would include the description of your vitals,
Okay.
of your health, of your health parameters.
So I guess now that we've gone through that, what is?
But we haven't gone through that.
What is the reason that you're?
We haven't gone through that. You haven't
So
answered
if you're
me.
concerned, if you're less concerned about intersex people, then why are you so concerned about transgender people?
Again, I was answering your question. You asked about
Well,
intersex.
they both get surgeries. Sometimes they
Wait a
both need
sec, was that like a double pivot? Yeah, like he's going to like a new thing already. I don't even know what he's talking about. Okay. And neither does Steven. Man, this guy is keeping me on my toes.
on treatment. What's your position against? If you're okay with one, why are you not okay with the other?
Well, here's exactly why. First off, you're taking an extreme example to make a point, misrepresenting those statistics. It's not 1.5% of the population.
But wait, hold on. Aren't all of his points about like Leah Thomas and like these one trans athletes who are really big in the media for like a couple weeks?
All right, I'll just Google it.
It's
fine.
You won't find a single position in the country.
According to experts, 1.7% of the population is born with intersex traits.
Pause a second. Let's analyze his Googling technique.
I'll just Google it.
Oh my god, this is such cringe. Holy shit. So he's trying to call out this Stephen Monacelli guy for doing exactly what Steven Crowder does. Like, Steven Crowder comes with a literal binder full of facts. He just doesn't put them on his phone. But, you can't... Man, I need to add, a rule for hypocrisy. Honestly, hypocrisy is like a -3 for me. Just unabashed hypocrisy. Why are you doing this to me, Steven? Unabashed hypocrisy.
You won't find a single position in the country.
According to experts,
A two-click Google search. It's almost as if he had the whole thing planned out. Poorly.
1.7% of the population is born with intersex traits.
That's from amnesty.org.
I mean, I can just keep. I can go to.
That's from amnesty.org.
I mean.
Okay, so that's rejecting valid evidence. Oops. Yeah, I knew this one was gonna be a bloodbath.
It's from there's Wikipedia. There's plenty
Yes,
of
Amnesty and Wikipedia. Okay.
There's
I'll make
here's
my
a
references
PubMed,
available.
NCBI, and this is a medical journal. So I mean,
Hold on a second. Let me actually. You know what? Okay. You know what?
I
Just
would
hold it up for me.
encourage
Hold it up for me.
anyone that
Hold it up for me.
wants to do
'Cause you
this.
just
What
brought
a
up.
cool guy. What a cool guy. I guess I have to give him a debunking any fact. debunking +2. Righteous.
PubMed, and it didn't
Yeah.
reflect what you just reflected in
So
Amnesty.
abstract.
0.0018%, almost 100 times lower than Fausto Sterling estimate of 1.7.
So it is because they are.
Like, can you
talking
hold that
about
up to the camera?
chromosomal Sex.
Can you hold that up to the camera?
Inconsistent.
Uh-oh.
Can you hold that up to the
phenotypic
camera?
Sex. Yeah. So let's see.
Can you hold it up to the camera?
There's a debate about this, which is what we're having.
Pause. Now, if you notice the shift, and I mean increase in my
taking that- I'm
enthusiasm,
taking that
it's
away.
because I was intensely familiar with the PubMed paper he was attempting to cite. And by cite, I mean blatantly misrepresent. And by blatantly misrepresent, I mean lie about. And this is the real value of Change My Mind in the conversations being included in their full context.
Okay, I'll give him a debunking any fact. Or debunked. 920.
Hold it up to the camera.
There's a debate about this. Sex.
Can you hold that up to the camera?
Inconsistent.
Can you hold that up to the
phenotypic
camera?
Sex. Yes. So let's see.
Can you hold it up to the camera?
There's a debate about.
Of 1.7.
So it.
0.0018%.
That's 8. 57. Debunked. Debunking claim. -2. No, wait, that's a +2. Sorry. Sorry, bro. Maybe we'll come out on
Almost
top.
100 times lower than Fausto Sterling estimate of 1.7.
So it is because they're.
Like, can you
talking
hold
about
that up to the camera?
chromosomal Sex.
Can you hold that up to the camera?
Inconsistent.
This is
Can you
pretty
hold that up to
brutal,
the
though.
camera?
Sex. Yeah. So let's see. There's.
Can you hold it up to the
Good
camera?
job.
There's a debate about this, which is what we're having.
Pause. Now, if you notice the shift, and I mean increase in my
Yeah,
enthusiasm,
this is honestly deflection.
because I was intensely familiar with the PubMed paper he was attempting to cite. And by cite, I mean blatantly misrepresent. And by blatantly misrepresent, I mean lie about. And this is the real value of Change My Mind in the conversations being included in their full context unedited. It's one thing to be able to lie about numbers to unsuspecting students in order to score political points. It's another to face accountability in real time. So let's rewind and zoom in and enhance on his screen. Unfortunately, the tech isn't good enough to get a crystal clear picture, but here's the actual PubMed article abstract. If the term intersex is to retain any meaning, the term should be restricted to those conditions in which chromosomal sex is inconsistent with phenotypic sex, or in which the phenotype
Brutal.
is not classifiable as either male
Brutal.
or female. Applying this more precise definition, the true prevalence of intersex is seen to be about 0.018%, almost 100 times lower than the Fausto Sterling estimate of 1.7.
Can you hold it up to the camera?
There's a debate about this, which is what we're having. Yeah, you can.
No wonder the social justice warrior slash handler of Curious George shoved
Oh,
his
that's good
phone back in
content.
his pocket
Good job,
faster
Steve.
than a crack pipe at the bordello of Biden.
Yeah, you can Google.
But you didn't
can
present
get
it as a
different-
debate.
You can get different.
The only,
figures.
hold on a second. Let me finish here because you just brought up amnesty.org and Wikipedia.
Sure.
The only legitimate medical publication that you brought up said exactly what I said. What number did I give you?
So,
what number did I give
so
you?
then let's put it into
What number
numbers.
did I give
If
you?
there are 100 people here,
What
or
number did I
1,000
give you?
people here, if there are 100 people here, or there are 1,000 people here, there's still going to be at least one person.
Look, if you're
There's
not
still
going
gonna be at least
if
one
truth
person.
doesn't matter to you, this isn't going to be a productive
I'm
conversation.
actually giving the numbers.
What number did I give to you?
So you gave me 0.1%,
0.01%.
0.0%.
What does that number from PubMed say?
Let's see. It says 0.08, which would be
0.018%.
Oh,
Point
come on, dude.
0.
No, that's pretty sleazy. Like, just, like, that's more deflecting. Deflecting. Yeah, I think Steven's gonna win this one. Holy shit. Our boy's doing it.
0.18%.
Yeah, that's the number I gave you.
So let's see what PubMed just said.
That is PubMed. You just showed the PubMed.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull
Now
up
you're
the
going
same
back to
doc.
amnesty.org, or you're going to Wikipedia. So my point is, look, you sit here and you spout numbers that are inaccurate When you go to one legitimate medical journal, it says that it's actually 1,000 times lower. So do we want to have a conversation about the topic at hand, or do you want to keep embarrassing yourself with wrong numbers?
So
Yikes.
if you're going to accept that there are people in this world, no matter how rare that you think that they are, that you're going to allow to participate in sports.
No matter how rare your own sources said they are.
No matter how rare that there are in existence, it doesn't matter what you think or what I think, they exist.
The numbers are the numbers.
Do you believe that they exist?
Of course I believe that.
So-
0.018% according
So
to
there are
PubMed.
people. So there are people in this state, in this city,
Yes.
who would fit that categorization. And just because there are a small number of them, you're going to just kind of
And
disregard
what
the
number of
example.
them require some kind of sex change? What number of them require
Why is
hormonal
that so
replacement?
threatening to you?
It's not threatening to me.
It seems like it is.
Well, what's bothering to me is your dishonesty.
So I'll
this is a red
grant
herring.
your
Yeah, same
number.
here.
I'll grant your number, and my
Right.
argument is still the same.
So what's the number of people there who are not accurately defined at birth by their primary and secondary sexual characteristics?
So once again,
It's about
why is this?
0.2% of 0.01.8% of the population.
And so because
Now, that's
and what's
not- so
the
the point
percentage
is
of
that's a
people that are
very
competing
small-
in sports that are transgender? What's that number of the population? What's that
the
percentage?
number of transgender people. in
Percentage of the total
about
population.
1%.
Yeah, and that
No,
are
so
competing
this
in
is
sport.
another deflection technique. He's just like trying to get Steven Crowder to do math. Like, oh yeah, why don't you calculate the percentage real quick? Just off the top of your head. Good technique, but it's like it's very sleazy debating. A very sleazy debating strategy. I guess that's just more deflecting. Yeah, I'll allow it.
As far as the categories that they enter, they end up winning about 66%, for example, in track, upwards of 90% in strength sports like powerlifting and Olympic lifting. That's significant. So even though they make up 1% of the population when they enter into female sports, they overwhelmingly tend to dominate, and this is a very small sample size. So my question to you is, what do we do? Because you're supposed to sit here and
Are we
change
going to
my
start talking about genetics as it relates to people winning sports? Is that what you want to do?
The fuck?
Is that what you're at?
Male
Is
and
that what
female
you're
sports
asking?
are separated by biology, yes?
I mean, what's the point of sports?
To win.
It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's
Okay,
winning.
this is dumb.
Why is that funny?
It just tells me a lot about who you are.
The point of sports is not to win?
I think a lot of people think there's more than one point to sports.
I mean, so much of sports is like people getting sweaty and like rubbing around with each other.
What's the point to winning an Olympic medal?
I don't know. I mean, why do we have the Olympics?
To identify who the best is at sport.
What is the historical reason why we have the Olympics?
Do you mean you want to go back to pancreation?
I mean, do we want to talk
Okay,
about...
now this is pivoting, for sure. Talking about the historical relevance of the Olympics all of a sudden. I don't know. Because pivoting's used in a advantage in a smart way, I might actually change that to a positive.
No, the modern
You wanna go back
reinvention
to-
of it.
Okay, so
Fascist politics, all that kind of stuff.
so you believe that people are competing, for example, in swimming, decathlon, biathlon, because
No,
of
I
fascist
think-
politics?
I think that the overarching mindset that sports is about, declaring dominance, and that there's some sort of actual value in this idea of international representation of dominance in sports. When did you ever have fun in your life? You ever have fun playing sports?
I didn't say it's about representing international dominance.
No, but I'm saying is you said it's all about winning. So
I said, what is the point of sports? What is the point
I
of
think
sports?
I think sports is a lot about having fun and making relationships with people and
Do you think
camaraderie.
it's fun to make the Olympic medaling platform? Think that's fun?
Go on, think. Is it fun?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Absolutely not?
Zero fun, sir.
All right.
I mean, it must provide a sense of accomplishment,
Why?
a sense of joy, because they worked hard to get there.
And the joy and accomplishment comes from what?
Working hard to get there, I guess.
Wouldn't you go into great lengths to avoid the term winning a medal?
I mean, hey, if you get second place and you're a spoiled brat about it, I think a lot of people would think you're kind of lame.
Do you think that the Olympic
True.
silver medalist who took second place to Leah Thomas, who wouldn't be ranked top 500 in the male division, is being a spoiled brat?
Well, what is your solution? Would you want to create an entirely separate category for transgender people in sports?
If you want.
That's another pivot. Wow, this is not how I expected this to go at all.
We can, otherwise.
No, that's not what I want to. I'm asking what you want.
Yeah, I think biological males should compete with biological males.
I'm asking specifically about transgender and intersex people now. Where do you think they should compete in sports?
Well, let's separate transgender and intersex, because intersex people don't want to be lumped in with transgenders.
I mean, who are you to speak for them? Are you intersex?
I'm letting them speak for them.
Are you telling me something about yourself?
I'm letting them speak for them, but I'm sure you'll find statistics that will prove you wrong. And
ad hominem? Jeez, what a jerk. That guy is a real piece of shit. I'm glad Steven dominated him. And I hate ad hominems. And just like saying, what, are you? That's more like an appeal to something. So he's saying, what, are you intersex? No, that was definitely intended as an insult. Or, no, actually, it's still not, it's a true ad hominem because it's not like a generic insult. He's like, you aren't even qualified to talk about what intersex people want because you're not intersex. So yeah, that is ad hominem.
Bolster what I'm discussing right now. Intersex people don't want to be lumped in with transgender individuals because there is a biological issue. There's not a biological issue with transgender individuals. It is a societal issue. It's a social issue.
Is it a biological issue that you would never make a basketball team because you can't jump?
That I can't jump?
Yeah.
Why are you making that presumption?
I'm just kind of following this logic to where it might conclude. No, I'm asking, are you?
You're asking, am I racist?
Yeah, what I'm saying is if you're so obsessed with certain types of people winning certain types of categories as if there's some sort of biological...
Yeah.
So you're an essentialist.
It's a figment of my imagination?
You're an essentialist.
Oh, well, let's throw that to me. What do you mean that I'm an essentialist, that I believe biological males should compete against biological males?
Well, I mean, you just talk about biological males and females so much that it essentializes gender into a binary that doesn't include all these people that we've just been talking about, and sex into a binary.
And sex.
Yeah.
You said gender.
And sex, yeah.
I didn't mention gender, I mentioned sex.
Well, I'm talking about both. Yeah, I would say.
I'm not.
Well, then let's just focus on sex. You are creating an essentialist binary.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so if you are saying that it is not binary, sex, then you are suggesting there should be a third division.
Not necessarily.
What's your solution?
One division.
I'm saying we should maybe stop taking sports so damn seriously and let people compete and create structures.
Yeah, see, that's actually a good point. Like, I super agree with that. If you don't, you're stupid. Because they're just fucking games. They're fucking children's games. It's putting a ball into a hole. Like, grow up, have real sex. Not this fucking fake sex. I mean, shit, masturbation's better than playing soccer.
For competing that aren't so damn politicized. How about that?
How about no?
Okay, great. So women should just shut up and take it. They're taking it too seriously. Women are taking it too seriously.
I think that's what I think you're taking it too seriously.
That's obviously strawman. Sorry about that.
No, I'm saying women out there are taking it too seriously.
Talk to a woman. There's plenty of women here. Talk to a woman.
Yeah, I have. I've spoken with many women.
What did she say?
There's also
what did they say?
They of course don't want biological males to compete in women's sports.
All right, so I'm going to give up my seat now. Is there a woman who would like to speak to him?
Pause. It's funny he should ask, because we just so happen to have talked to a female athlete, one of Leah Thomas's teammates. Peers, if you will, at UPenn, to be exact, and here's what she had to say. That guy, Monacelli, seems to be uneducated. I would say that the way the rules are set up right now straight up deny women from equal educational opportunities in sport and discriminate against women by not recognizing the physical differences between men and women. And women shouldn't be forced to take a back seat in their own sport.
They didn't invent the sport of swimming.
Female athlete.
All right, cool. Hey, it's been nice, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
I appreciate it.
I don't know.
So no solution, no dog in the fight, just wrong sources. Every other conversation's been very productive.
I'd say, have fun making it your career to go talk to college students who don't want to talk to you.
Don't be an asshole your whole life.
Now, given what's transpired, one might think that Mr. Monacelli would take the L and never speak of this embarrassing performance again. But that's not what insane people do. Instead, he took to Twitter to declare victory and attempt to dox our car.
Okay.
Looks like someone might be getting a little obsessed.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
This is the kind of delusional behavior which can...
Okay, so let's do the tallies. Turn on the tally music. -10 for Steven Crowder. A little +1 at the end. Yikes. So, there's apparently going to be like a third one tomorrow, and I might do that. But you know, I think I was a little bit too hard on Steven in the first round. So because he has, it was -11 to -2 in the first one. Second one was -10 to -21. So I think all in all, Steven is the victor, at least so far. Congratulations on eradicating trans women and trans men from sports entirely. And yeah, that's about it. Peace, bro.